Well, thank you so much for staying tuned. Yes, it is the last lap of the show, issues and views, right here on Enyimba 94.3 FM. We're streaming live on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Enyimba 943 FM. Join the conversation there on the Facebook. Also, drop your comments under the live stream there on our Facebook page. Also, be part of what we're doing by dropping your comments on the WhatsApp platform. The WhatsApp line is 0809 666 0943. 0809 666 0943. That's the number for you to participate. I told you this morning we will be talking about economy in Nigeria, and it's about the state of the economy. Of course, it's about the Nigeria's troubled economy, and especially the way out. Of course, Nigeria has the biggest economy in Africa. Someone asked that question last week. I had to go back to my indices to check if we're still the biggest. We're still the biggest economy in Africa, of course. But we've been grappling with significant economic challenges, despite our title as the most populous country and the largest economy in Africa. Harsh realities persist in the form of rising cost of living. And this has given way to the distressing economic downturn that has sparked recent protests. In fact, just yesterday, a warehouse was looted in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Joining us to analyze the economy of the country and also to profile a way out is Professor Fatai Aremu. Is joining us all the way from Abuja this morning on the show. And of course, Professor Fatai Aremu is the Executive Director of Research Enterprise Systems, an independent, non-partisan knowledge production, capacity development, communication, and outreach organization with interest in policy advising, strategy development, research clinic, and data support services. Of course, he was the head of the socio-political unit at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, the National Assembly in Abuja, where he conducted policy research and training activities on policy engaged research and the likes. And of course, he also worked at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPSS, and he's of the Department of Political Science, University of Ilorin, and visiting research fellow of the Human Sciences Research Council at South Africa. Just to run through a brief portfolio so that you will know that he's the right person to talk about Nigeria's economy this morning. Thank you so much for joining us all the way from Abuja. Prof, good morning to you.
Good morning, my pleasure.
All right, my name is Michael. I do have my colleague Mary also in the studio this morning. I'm sure the economic situation of the country is also affecting you. So there is no gainsaying that it is affecting everybody. How did we get here?
Well, good morning, Michael. Good morning, Mary. And good morning, all our listeners all over the world. The story of the current economic crisis dates back some time. Maybe we can say from the era of President Goodluck Jonathan. The foundation for the crisis that we are currently experiencing was laid at that time. And the causes of this crisis are multifaceted. Some of them are constitutional, some of them are structural, and some of them are attitudinal in nature. So we'll dissect them one after the other as we move along. But okay, let me allow you to ask more questions.
Go ahead, Prof. Okay. Just go ahead.
So the reason that I said it dates back to the President Jonathan's presidency was because before Obasanjo left office, the price of oil went up. It went up beyond the benchmark that the budget was prepared. And we had an experienced economist, a world-class economist, now Director General of the World Trade Organization, Professor Okonjo-Iweala, at the helm of affairs. And in her wisdom, she decided to say, no, when you are making money in excess, you don't spend it, you save it. Because the price of oil is not going to remain high forever. Therefore, you need to create a buffer and they set up what they call excess crude account at that time. Well, this is another subject because the last president we actually had was President Olusegun Obasanjo. All the other presidents since that time had been representatives of the Governors Forum. So when President Jonathan then came on board, the governors challenged him. I think they took him to court to challenge the legality of the excess crude account. And of course, because the Constitution didn't provide for it and didn't give the federal government the power to save, let me say, extract from the earnings from oil to save for the future. Some of the governors were, if you read the book by Okonjo-Iweala, Fighting Corruption is Dangerous, he narrated the experiences in that book. So it's not something that is actually hidden. He mentioned the names of the governors who were championing the campaign at that time. So from that period onwards, they shared all the money. They spent everything completely. By the time, if we fast forward a little bit, by the time President Buhari came, he didn't have any clue as to how the government was going to take off. It took him 6 months to even form his cabinet. And in today's fast-paced world, the world doesn't wait. So Nigeria just slid into recession straight away. And that recession, we're still trying to come out of recession, then COVID came in. So I can tell you, as at 2019, between 2018 and 2019, Nigeria's economy was already on the ground because our fiscal account, our statement of account was already in the red as at that time because if we decided to service the debts, there will be no money for capital. Even for recurrent, the revenue will not be enough to cover the recurrent.
Prof, permit me to cut in here. What you're saying now is that the problem we are facing today didn't start in few weeks after the proclamation. But many analysts are also looking at the removal of fuel subsidy. The announcement made by President Bola Tinubu on the day he was inaugurated in Abuja. It immediately affected everything. And you know what happens when the price of fuel goes up in the country.
Hello?
Yes, Prof. Go ahead, please. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
You see, to be honest with you, that kind of analysis is not a strong one. It's not based on evidence. Anybody who is familiar, who has been following this, should know that the foundation, the reason that the subsidy had to be removed, let me tell you, the subsidy would have been removed earlier because there was no way that Nigeria would be able to sustain the subsidy. It was COVID that prevented the subsidy from being removed as at between 2019 and 2020. Because at that time, our financial statement of account was already in disarray. If we service the debt, there will be nothing for the recurrent. If we pay for the recurrent, we won't be able to service our debt. So at that time, the subsidy would have been gone. But because COVID came in and everything collapsed, so they had to roll it forward, and the World Bank and all our creditors had to just find a way to by the 2022 election was already knew that if they had removed the subsidy at that time, election came. That's why when they were preparing it from May or June, so there was nothing that the new will take another budget to the National Assembly, and it was a subsidy from the time that allowed the federal government to save.
Oh, goodness. The network is not going to allow us have a smooth conversation. This morning we're getting somewhere, of course, highlighting where the problem started and, of course, how we can get out of this mess that we are
in now.
It's a mess in the country. Of course, we've been speaking with Professor Fatai Aremu, who joins all the way from Abuja, of course, talking about Nigeria's economy and the way out. Yes, Prof, the network knocked you out there because... but let's get back to the genesis of the problem. You said that the genesis of the problem was how reckless we were back in the day, especially courtesy of the governors. And it is not really because of that pronouncement. But then many are also of the opinion that the president shouldn't have made that announcement on that day because the market reacted to that statement during President Tinubu's inaugural speech.
You are right. And those who are also right. The manner in which the announcement, inauguration should be inauguration, making a policy pronouncement should be a separate thing. So mixing the two together was probably not strategic. However, whether the announcement was made on inauguration day, whether it was made a week after, whether it was made any time, the bottom line is that subsidy was not going to be sustained in the budget, and the price of fuel will definitely go up, and the price of goods and services, the market will definitely react. Whether the announcement was made on inauguration day, or it was made on the second day, or the third day, or 1 week after, the fact remains that the subsidy was no longer in the budget. There was no way that it would have been in the budget. And nobody would be able to bring it back because the statement of account, the thing was that we didn't save when we had the excess. We didn't save. So when the crisis came, there was nothing to fall back on. Let me tell you, Michael, and this is where we have to educate people. We have to let people know where the problem is. And the problem is in the nature of our political elite. They just don't have the ability to think about tomorrow. And it is so unfortunate because nation building, no country succeeds if the leaders are thinking of today, they are thinking of themselves, they are thinking of what they can take from the system, not what they can give to the system. I have not seen anywhere in the world that the elite will say, if we are making excess money from the sale of oil, our major foreign exchange earning, and they will sit down and go to court to say the federal government has no right to save the money. It just does. Even at individual level, when you are making extra cash, it's not for you to expand your expenditure, it's for you to save and invest for tomorrow. The political elite in Nigeria are not saving. They did not save. They did not invest. In fact, quite the opposite. They are piling up debt for generations that didn't know anything to come and be paying it.
Okay.
So, I mean, these are just the issues.
Away from the genesis of the problem now, what Nigerians want is a reduction in the high cost of living. Beyond the genesis of this problem, who did what, and of course the blame game that is ongoing right now, even amidst the political elite, the back and forth between the previous administrations and also the present administration. What is the way out? How can we douse the tension in the country at the moment? What can the federal government do to reduce the high cost of living?
Okay, so Mike, you know, this is a frank conversation, and I'll be very plain with you because of where we're coming from, particularly the past 8 years. That was the struggle to pretend that things were fine when things were not really fine, and they didn't tell Nigeria the true situation of the things. And there were also all sorts of infractions, malpractices, and corrupt practices all over the place. So that also exacerbated the situation. So I will use one phrase to describe the current situation, and that will probably guide us as to how to get out of it. We are just sandwiched between the rock and a hard place. Because in situations like this, that you have high inflation, price of goods and services are rising, and the economy is grossly underperforming, then you are sandwiched between the rock and the hard place. In situations like this, the best thing the government could do is to increase government spending, to put money in the hands of the people, allow contractors to get contracts, because President Obama, when he came in during the period of economic crisis. And the way they got out of it was to reflate the economy, increase government, start to renovate roads, let people get work and get money into their pocket, let them spend, and then stimulate production. The factories can begin to hire. The challenge with our current situation is that even if you try, one, the money is not available anywhere in the first place. The second half now, the more inflation you are going to get, continue to go high. So what I think in the short term is, are we still together?
Yes, we're together, Prof.
Thing that I think they need to do, and they need to do quickly, is to make sure that not only government workers but ordinary people should have.
Oh goodness! Again, although we're getting to the last end of we're getting to the conclusion of the conversation we're having with Professor Fatai Aremu, who joins us all the way from Abuja this morning. Yes, you were saying something about not giving money only to the workers, but also to everybody.
No. Every human being that is a Nigerian at this moment needs money.
So
particularly vulnerable groups.
So you're supporting palliative distribution?
No, palliative distribution is one thing. Getting money into people's hands. People can make a choice as to what they want to use that money for, what they want to buy with it. Distributing the cups of rice to people will not solve the problem.
Okay, if the federal government decides to share money to the people, won't it lead to printing of money? Where will the money come from?
No. So and the
question of inflation. The inflation is presently double digit, almost getting to 30%. So what will happen? So, won't it increase the inflation in the country?
So that's why I said we are sandwiched between the rock and the hard place. So there are short-term measures and there are long-term measures that need to be introduced. The short-term measure right now is that people must survive first. Because if you say you want to battle inflation, you have to reduce government spending, you have to curtail all sorts of things so that you can drive prices down. You cannot implement contractionary economic policy in this current situation because you are just going to suffocate everyone. I think the best thing to do, and the data is there, is to identify those who are vulnerable and do precision targeting. As the World Bank had supported Nigeria, that social register that they developed, they can find a way to update it and identify persons with disabilities, those who are really indigent, those who are in the rural areas, those who are really the hardest hit. They should be targeted with some kind of, financing. Of course, the salaries and wages will need to be increased because without that, it's not just possible for an average public servant to survive in this kind of situation. So in the short term, for people to survive, you can't do without this. Then in the medium term, you can begin to then address the question of runaway inflation that we are battling with. But right now, if you say you want to embark on contractionary economic policy by reducing government spending, mopping up liquidity in the space, you can't do the two at the same time, because that will definitely create a lot of hardship for people if you embark on contractionary economic policy at this moment.
Okay.
All right, Prof, I want clarification on something. I know that we've already passed this side and we're already talking about solution, but I would want a little bit of clarification on this.
So, yes.
I want a little bit of clarification on something, even though we are talking about solution, but I want you to clear me on something, because sometime last week, Abba State Governor actually came out and said that one of the reasons we have the fall of Naira is because too much money was printed by Central Bank of Nigeria. And there has been this back and forth about the previous administration, the reforms that they put in place, and also the present administration. Some persons are saying that it looks as if the reforms that President Bola Tinubu came with are not working, and probably he needs to go back to the drawing board and check some things that should work and the ones that are not going to work. But from what you just said this morning, you're making it sounded to me as if what we are facing and the quagmire we are in now as a country has nothing to do probably with the present administration and the previous one, and it dates back. So can you clarify me on these issues? Does it mean that the floating of the Naira, the printing too much of money, like said about Abia State governor, has nothing to do with the economic hardship we are facing presently in the country?
Well, there is none of these administrations that we can exonerate. It built over time.
Okay.
I just traced it back to when the whole
the excess crude account
foundation, the foundation for the crisis was actually laid, rather than subsequent administration adopting the right policies to address that. They actually continue to accelerate the pace to this economic quagmire that we are. So coming back to the issue of the exchange rate. So let me ask a question. You know, the governors have more information than we do, and we have to defer to them on some things. But we were all in Nigeria last year, just before last year. Which money was printed when we can't even get the money? We couldn't even get the money. We were buying Naira. You have to pay money to get Naira that you want. If they printed the money and they kept the money somewhere for themselves, probably that one we don't know. But which money did you print that we didn't even see the cash flow? To get money, people died struggling at the banks. The problem with the exchange rate has to do, one, with the nature of our political elite that I told you about, just to consume, just to withdraw and spend. Second, it's a simple demand and supply thing. When you don't produce and export, and you import everything, including now education and health, now you pay a lot of money to foreign universities, you pay a lot of money to foreign hospitals, you pay all these things in US dollars, in addition to importing virtually everything, including food. What do you expect? So even to address this exchange rate, they can adopt some short-term measures, but let me tell you the truth. Until we are able to restructure the Nigerian economy in such a way that we export more and we earn more dollars, that's the only time that we can stabilize the value of Naira against the dollar. But as long as we are not exporting so much, we import almost everything, the pressure on the dollar will always be there because it will always be scarce. And once you have scarcity, the value will always go up. It's simple, elementary economics. We don't need any sophisticated modeling to get to that point.
All right. All right, Prof, sorry to cut you short, but some persons have actually been calling for the opening of our borders. Some persons believe that once the borders are open and people are able to import, we'll have this demand and supply, we'll have surplus, which can actually lead to the crashing of prices of goods and services. Do you think that's actually the way to go for us to open our borders right now?
So that issue of border closure is another subject, it's a different conversation entirely. And whether it is an effective measure, whether it's a very productive one, is a debate for another day. However, if I recall very well, the purpose of the border closure was to stimulate local production, particularly of rice and other agricultural commodities that were being imported and smuggled into our borders. Honestly, I can't really say how effective that policy is, because I mean, Nigeria's border is just huge. We don't even have the manpower or the resources to police it, because people are still bringing in goods through the illegal routes.
Okay.
But then, okay.
Yes,
please,
yes.
so
Quickly,
because
because of our time now. Finally, CBN has been going around with some reforms. The clampdown on bureau de change operators. The back and forth between Emefiele and the federal government, and also the raising of the MPR just last week during the MPC meeting by the CBN governor, Olayemi Cardoso. Are these reforms towards the right direction? Because we've seen the dollar crashing due to the implementation of some of those reforms put in place by the Olayemi Cardoso-led CBN.
So, if you are in charge of the CBN in the country under this kind of situation, you'll be having sleepless nights. So I really don't, I sympathize with the current governor of the CBN, but I would also have liked a situation where there is better coordination between the monetary policy authorities and the fiscal policy authorities. Over the past 8 years, during the period of President Muhammadu Buhari, they never saw eye to eye. Monetary policy was going on one side, fiscal policy was going on the other side. Sometimes they even issue contradictory statements in the media, in the public space. They even antagonize each other. And this is where some of this, because where you don't have coordination. So why all these policies are being rolled out by the CBN, I would have preferred a situation where even the Ministry of Finance is also in tandem with them, because you can't separate monetary policies from fiscal policies. They still connect and they all add up. So it is too early to assess those initiatives that he has brought on board. I think we can still wait and see how it works out. Our hope is that the value of naira at least is stabilized against the dollar, and that the price of goods and services come down so that the ordinary Nigerian can be able to live a good life.
All right. Professor Fatai Aremu, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate you for your analysis, and we will reach out to you as the event unfolds in Nigeria's economy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Prof is the Executive Director of Research Enterprise Systems, an independent, non-partisan knowledge production capacity development. He was the head of the Socio-Political Unit at the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies at National Assembly Abuja. And he also worked at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPSS, and he's of the Department of Political Science, University of Ilorin, and visiting research fellow of the Human Sciences Research Council, South Africa.